Welcome and thank you for taking the time to participate today. I am Scott Woody, co-chair for this year's Law Student Tax Challenge. My co-chair Aman is unable to attend today, but also on the call with us today is going to be Jennifer Phillips and Genevieve Borello from the ABA. They may have a few administrative details to add later on, and we do have some of the team members from last year's team. As a preliminary note, we will not answer any substantive questions today. If you do have a substantive question concerning the contest, please post it on the listserv. But again, turning to the individuals you're really here to listen to today, we have Isaac and Ivan from last year's Best Written JD team, Tracy from last year's First Place JD team, and Robert, coach of last year's First Place JD team. I will let them introduce themselves. And team members and coaches, if you would also please give us just a quick note on what was the impact of winning the challenge for you. Isaac, can we start with you?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Isaac Furman. I participated last year in the JD division with Ivan Rudd. He was my partner. I just graduated from University of Miami from the JD, and I'm finishing the tax LL.M this semester. And I think the competition helped me just get a little more. I guess it gave me a better idea of what practicing tax really is, and the opportunity to attend the ABA tax conference and be surrounded with tax professionals, in the panels, and also, the opportunity to go ahead and kind of deal with a client issue, you know, that feels more like work than in school, gave me more of an idea of what the day-to-day of a tax professional is. So I already had a job when I signed up for the competition, but I think it did help me just get a little more interest into why it is that I want to pursue a career in tax. So I definitely recommend it.
Thank you. It's very helpful. Ivan?
Hi. Yeah, so I kind of joined a little bit late, but um, what was the question again? You're asking how this impacted.
Sorry, could you go ahead and just introduce yourself first, and
Sure.
then just a quick note on what the impact of winning the challenge was for you?
Okay, yeah, my name's Ivan Rudd. I was with Isaac. We had I guess we won best writing and came in second in the oral competition. Had a really great experience with the program, with the competition, and kind of getting some real world experience or being able to try out the skills from school was a really great experience. And yeah, I work in accounting and tax now, and I see the same stuff here. So it was a good experience.
Thank you. It's very helpful also. Tracy, can we turn to you next? I think you're muted, Tracy.
Sorry, I'm on my phone. So my name is Tracy Costanzo. I won the JD competition with my partner, Amanda Heppinger, last year. I'm currently a 2L at Syracuse University. I was in my 1L year when I competed. The competition has enabled me to hone in a little bit better on the what is expected of an associate working in a practice doing tax law, and as well as working on my writing skills and my oral advocacy skills during the oral competition, and being able to properly present the argument to a partner as well as the client. And it's also helped me to, when I left my most recent position, to obtain a new position as a paralegal doing estate and trust administration and looking forward to graduating and working, doing estate planning and tax planning. That was extremely helpful because the firm that I work in is extremely involved with the ABA in their tax section, as well as with the Florida tax section of the Florida bar. So overall, it was just a great experience. And most importantly, I really enjoyed the opportunity to meet professionals within the field that I otherwise ordinarily would never have been exposed to. So that was such a great experience at the competition in San Diego.
Tracy, that's great. And actually, it's something I didn't know. You had won the contest as a 1L. Did you take a tax class before participating in the challenge?
Yeah, I took so I'm in a part-time program. So I started in August of 21. So we go year round. So I didn't actually finish my 1L year until the end of fall 2022. So I took federal income tax 1 over the summer and then competed in fall. I worked with Amanda to write the memo. So I had just started my 2L year when we did our oral competition. And so I'm just finishing my 2L year this semester, and then I will officially be a 3L after in spring.
Well, congratulations. You're almost there. Robert, same question.
So I'm the coach of Tracy and Amanda. I teach tax classes and I run the tax clinic at Syracuse Law School. I'd like to say having the championship team got me a big bonus or raise, but it didn't. It's helpful in getting teams this year. I think being able to say, hey, Syracuse, we are the defending national champions. We actually had the runner-up in 2020. We're the Alabama of this program. We need to keep it ball rolling. So it's helped promote the competition among students. It's been easier to get interested teams this year than ever before. And I think that's because I can say that Amanda and Tracy won.
It's very good. And that's something we've seen as throughout the years, when you do have a winning team, that more students not only want to participate, but also are interested in tax and take those classes for the coaches out there listening. Before we open the floor to questions from the participants, I do have a couple questions. If I can start with Tracy and Isaac. Tracy, what's one thing that you did that you'd recommend that a participant would do going forward?
So Amanda and we met together we were via Zoom because we were in different parts of the country. So we met and we dissected the problem as a whole together. And it was after we had a really good handle on the problem as a whole and all of the parts of it. It was at that point that we then divided the work up between the two of us so that when we felt that we could equitably divide the work between us so that one person wasn't handling a larger load than the other, because we felt that we had a good understanding of the first section, the second, and the third, and then writing the client letter. So we were able to do that much more efficiently after having met a couple of times and really working through it. I think that would probably be my best advice.
That's great. Isaac, same question.
Yeah, and I agree. We actually also had we independently worked on the paper. Let's say that. And before we even started, working together at all, we each had come up with a solution. So I think that gave us a bit more of like room for error, because the questions that the challenge poses are complex questions. They're not easy ones, and you're not going to get all of them. You might not get all of them right. You probably won't. And there might be different resources and, different case law, different source of law and revenue rulings that may lead you to different answers. So I think doing the work independently and then coming together and discussing it, and then you can, as a team, you can define who has a better grasp on each part of the question, like Tracy mentioned, and then divide and conquer, and then work together to put a final paper that is cohesive and reads as one. But it definitely felt difficult and complex. We had no help whatsoever when we were writing. So, and I think that those are the rules also with the coaches. But definitely how it should feel when you're an associate. So, very real life experience. Mhm.
That's
And
great.
and I would also say, even if you don't feel confident, which we for sure didn't, just submit the paper. Like, we won best writing, and I don't think we were like that confident. We were surprised to be even selected to go on to the final round. So just do it. You have nothing to lose. You've worked hard for a couple of weeks or months, so just submit the paper. Doesn't matter.
That's a great point. Just
I
submit
echo
the
that as
paper.
well, that we were not confident at all when we submitted. I mean, we felt like we had answered the questions as best we could, but we were honestly over the moon excited when we were selected as semifinalists. And we were just happy to be there, to be honest.
It's the paper itself is a reward. I definitely agree with that as a past participant. Ivan, is there anything you'd like to recommend as far as a recommendation?
Oh no, I mean, I think Isaac kind of explained our process pretty well. We worked on our papers separately before we had time to work together and kind of had hashed out on our own sort of what we thought about the problem. I agree that it was like a surprise that it worked out as well as it did. Because I agree with that. I don't think we really thought that like we had written something that special in that regard, but we tried to answer the questions as best as we could and keep it tied to the question. So I agree. Like, if as long as you feel you answer the question, submit it. It's if you're not in it, you can't win it. So
It's a good point. Ivan, if we could kind of stay with you, you've mentioned how what you'd recommend in your general approach to this as a team. How did you and Isaac approach this as far as the actual writing? You kind of mentioned we did the research separately and brought it together. How did you approach the writing?
well, so what do you mean by approach, right? So I mean, there were three, as I recall, there were three parts to it, and so we had kind of structured our answer to address each of those. We kind of broke out the writing. I think, as I recall, like, we split up the questions, the three questions between each other, kind of took parts that we had each written on our own and then put them together, tried to read them together so it doesn't sound like two people writing at the same time. That was probably the harder part, was just getting both voices to not sound like two voices, to sound like one. I mean, you got to do your research on Checkpoint and like make sure you're in the ballpark.
So kind of a divide and conquer approach to that.
Yeah, I think you have to, if you're going to speak about it at competition, you have to have written about it.
Right. And that's a good point. And I think we can mention that the judging this is a team, not individuals. Isaac, if I could turn to you for a second, we've kind of,
Yeah, I can
Ivan,
actually add
yeah,
to that. I can add to the writing part. Just a point which actually was important when we were writing. One of the most difficult aspects of the competition, in my opinion, was the page limit on the submission on both I think it was 10-page, the memo, and 5-page, the letter to the client. And you know, as I mentioned, the questions are complex or difficult. There's a ton of resources that you may use in your analysis and that you may want to bring in. And I think that in law school, especially like in the 1L writing memos that we used to do, you know, they were also shorter than you know, before law school for sure, but and more concise. But I think here in particular, because it's tax, it's very technical. You really need to work on getting the information that you need in, and that's it. There's no room for anything else. Otherwise, you're gonna get lost in the wood, I guess. That's how we call it. So just, you know, I would like research and start like going into like very deep into like some of the issues, and like, oh, then this becomes a problem. And sometimes it wasn't like I was like getting completely away from the actual question and the client's problem. So I'd say like after you write something and you research, take a step back, take a day or two, read it again, see if you really need everything that you wrote, because most likely there are some things that, you know, we obviously like to get very technical in the tax world, but yeah, it's hard to get everything in. So, you know, keep it simple.
That's a great point. Sometimes you need to let it sit and rise, as a former professor used to tell me. Tracy, if you could kind of address your overall approach to writing, and maybe specifically your approach to the client letter, and how that approach, if it was different, how it was different than the partner memo.
So I actually took responsibility for writing the client letter for our team. So that was part of my responsibility. And I wanted to make sure that we were targeting our audience and that we were making sure that the letter that was written was not so technical as to overwhelm a client, but provided the basic information that they would need to know in order to make an informed decision, and so that they clearly understood the what the issues they were facing were. So we really focused on making sure we understood who our audience was, because it was, we had our memo and we used that as our framework for the client letter, but it had to be tailored differently, because what you're telling an attorney is something very different from what you're going to tell the client. You're going to give them the same information, but you have to make sure, that it's done in language that a client can understand. And our client was, in our hypothetical, which I think is posted, was, not highly, sophisticated in the tax world type of thing. So you wanted to make sure that you understood that and that you were writing to them and not to a partner. I guess that's the best way that I can know your audience.
That's a great point, and that's a great practice skill once you're out in the, as they say, in the real world. If I could stay with you, Tracy, for a second. We've kind of talked about what it did for you, but why would you encourage a student to participate? We've all got things to do. This is a heavy lift, but why would you encourage a student to participate?
I would definitely encourage anyone who is considering a career in tax, or even just in business or anything of that nature, to doing transactional work, to really compete and to take the time to read and dive in and do it, because 90% of I worked doing estate and trust administration as a paralegal. 90% of what I do is reading statutes and being able to dissect statutes. So, and understand them. And what I've learned most in taking my income tax class as well as my estate and gift tax is that the majority of what we do is statutory. So you have to understand how to read statutes and how to interpret them. And if you can get a good handle on that and be able to apply it to real world situations, and you can articulate that in writing to another person, then it's just helping you gain more skills. And even if you don't make it to the semifinals, you've at least given it your best shot, and you've taken the time to really think about it and put it on paper. And it's not just simply an assignment for a grade. It was something that was more than that. For me, it was personal. And I've always, dreamed of doing estate and tax planning. So for me, it was personal and I wanted to do well. But just in terms of understanding how to properly articulate transactional type issues to a partner, I think is very important,
Thank you.
as
And
well
that's
as to a client.
thank you. And to a point, you could also say participation not only is it going to help you develop skills, but it's also a great bullet point on your resume going forward. Isaac, same question.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's if you're looking for a job, it's definitely a great pointer to have. Because and I think, what describes competition the most is that it's not like any other law school assignment where like an exam where you are prepared for it and the professor has worked with you to take you there. This, you're working on your own. Um, and that's how real life is. So to me, it felt a lot more similar to real life than law school. And if I were to, if I had to interview after the competition, I know it would have been a great help. But in addition, I think for me, the most fun was being in the ABA conference. It was my first one, my first ABA conference, not only tax. And it was just a great experience. I saw people that I had met from Miami there, so reconnecting with them, and it was a surprise for them to see me, a law student there. And then just networking after the awards were given. We had a cocktail and we had some special um, some indicators that we had been the winners. And it was just great. People would approach us and it was a lot of fun. People were offering interviews and jobs, so it was it was very fun. I would definitely recommend just for the opportunity to get to go to the conference.
Conferences are always great, and I would defer to the ABA people on board, but I believe, and we'd have to confirm that registration for law students is free at the conferences. We'd have to double check with the ABA, but even if you don't make it to the finals, it's something to consider if you're on the West Coast this year. And thank you, Genevieve. You've confirmed that, yes, we're always free for our section meetings. Ivan, is there something you would like to add to that or expand upon?
No, I thought Tracy did a really nice job of emphasizing the difference in how you write a letter to a client versus how you write a letter to a lawyer, even though you're covering the same information. That's something this competition emphasizes, and that was a really important and good learning lesson about when you go out and start actually having a job and working in tax. If you are going to work in tax, it's a specialized area. So, and clients do not know the specialty. So they want to hear it in a way that they'll understand it. And that's a really important part of this competition that I think is very good.
Thank you. Just so we get a little broader view of things here, Robert, if I could turn to you for a couple questions. How did you prepare your team for the oral defense rounds?
First, I wanted to agree with what you said, Scott, about how it's a great resume line. it's a lot of work to actually complete the written product and submit it. And again, as I think all the students said, they were kind of surprised that they made it to, was it San Diego? So the percentages of people that make it to the semifinals is small, but I think it's a fantastic resume line. It shows that you do things you don't have to do. It shows that you're interested in tax, and it gives you something substantive to talk about during an interview. If I were interviewing somebody and saw that, I'd want to hear about the problem and expect that you'd be intelligent and describing it. So I just wanted to add that. So for the oral argument part of the practice, the three of us met again on Zoom. I think we'd met 2 or 3 times. I know at least 2, maybe 3. And the students would present, and I would pretend to be the partner or the client. I think we did one where I was the partner and one where I was the client. And my wife, who teaches here, also was, she can hear everything on Zoom at home. And she commented the other day when I told her about doing this, how amazingly better the students were the second time than the first time. So I think it's really, really helpful if you get to that point to have, as many or at least several practice sessions. You can do more, I think, as a coach under the rules with the practice sessions than you can with the writing part of the competition. So the writing part, our hands are pretty tied, but the practice sessions are a better way to prepare people. So I hope some team this year makes it to the practice session, because that was fun for me and I learned a lot from it too.
That's great, Robert. If we could stick with you for a second, I guess I had one major question, but I think I want to split it up a little bit. So sticking with the written product, what tips would you give a student that was struggling with that written product? You mentioned there's some rules as far as what you can and can't do. Is there any particular tips?
I guess I would tell them, because I would stress the benefit of submitting something. So don't give up. Like, even if you're not happy, you don't feel you're doing the best job. Again, getting over the hurdle and submitting something passable is going to benefit you, again, resume wise. Beyond that, I'm not sure there's much that I can do. I guess, I'm allowed to, mention code sections that hopefully the people have studied and repeat that. I guess I do ask to look at the writing, although I can't comment on it much, but sometimes, I can look at the writing and say, maybe you guys need to go look at section 17 or something. Maybe that'll open up some windows. So
That's great. And we would recommend that everyone review the rules again to see what coaches can and cannot do. But speaking of coaches, Robert, is there any particular advice you'd like to give any coaches, especially those that haven't participated before?
It's hard. It's hard to sit on your hands and not say too much in the preliminary part of the competition. So you have to abide by the rules. Again, the students are going to do a better job than, I always say, the students do a better job than I certainly would do. They get into it very deeply, and the problems are always very interesting and clever. I do, as I think Tracy said, the memo to the partner and the letter to the client, they're 2 different things. In many ways, I view this as a writing competition. My hunch is a lot of people come up with pretty good answers on the tax law issues. So then it's like becomes who writes it up better. Again, if there are coaches out there, people Tracy and Amanda were perfect because they'd completed an entire tax class. It's hard to drum up excitement among 2Ls who might be taking tax 1 right now and, can look at the problem and say, oh, I've never heard of a 1031 transaction, but I see on the syllabus we're covering that on November 15th. So it's hard for them, but you can encourage them, still that it's worth a try. And then again, I always publicize the competition to last year's students because they're, more prepared in terms of having had a whole class. In my team that came in second in 2020, they did it as 2Ls and didn't do super well, and then did it again. So that's always a possibility, which I tell people, give it a try as a 2L, and you can come back and do even better as a 3L.
Right. And I'd like to make a comment before I ask Ivan and Tracy and Isaac another question. I think having that tax 1 class under your belt is helpful, but I don't think it's a prerequisite. I think a lot of people can dig into this at the same time. And so if there's any students on the call that are thinking about it, or any coaches that have someone that hasn't taken a class or is currently taking a class, as Robert mentioned, go ahead and do it. You've got another year or 2 possibly. You can also repeatedly enter.
The problems I don't know how long this has been going on, but I've coached teams for 20 years. Had maybe half a dozen make it to the semifinals. The problems have gotten better and better and better over time. So the people putting together the problems do an amazing job. 20 years ago, I thought they were too hard and not tailored as well toward tax 1 level students. But last 10, 15 years, the problems are fantastic. So.
Well, thank you for that feedback, and we'll get that to the drafters. Ivan, can I turn back to you? We kind of mentioned what Robert did to get his teams ready for the on-site competition and oral rounds. What best practice or advice did you have for that?
Yeah, so we actually had a pretty similar setup where we had a professor of ours, Professor Rosenberg. She was our coach. She did sort of a similar thing where she had us meet for sort of the oral practice. She didn't get involved with the paper as per the rules, but she, coached us in regard to one day I'll be a partner and you guys, talk to me as if I'm a partner. One day I'll be a client, and ask questions that a client or partner would ask and have us practice it. And it's very true what Robert was saying about how much of a difference from the first practice to second practice. When you write out the answers, it's one thing, but then to go discuss it and explain it was important for us to hear ourselves talk about it and work through some of the things that were just hard to explain, so it's a very similar process.
Right. So you're saying practice, and practice some more.
Yeah, practice speaking about the stuff. I mean, I remember there was one moment in particular where, when you write, you get a lot of work out of using a regulation section. If I use 1001 in writing, I use section 1001. I can actually convey a lot of thought with just that one thing. But when I'm speaking and I talk about section 1001, it's it doesn't do as much work. It all of a sudden sounds like something, very complicated or nuanced. And being able to explain tax is also very much the difference between writing a letter to a client and writing something to a partner. You got to be able to talk about it in a clear way. And that was something that kind of worked its way out during those practices with our professor.
That's a great point. Tracy, if I could ask the same question to you.
Yeah, the practice rounds were vitally important to us. Because Amanda and I had never met in person, and we were doing everything over Zoom. It was really important for us to be able to have somebody ask us questions and be able to work off of one another as well when we were answering. And then, we knew where each other's strengths and weaknesses were. So, that helped us. And then we were able to say, okay, I need to, get better educated on this topic. And I need, maybe I need to, I feel good about this, but I need to get better educated about this other section, and it just really helped us when, especially with the questions just like firing at you because they don't stop. And you think it's going to stop and it doesn't. And so Professor Nassau did a really amazing job of asking us very difficult questions and very similar to the questions that we were asked during our oral arguments. And having to articulate it is very different from writing it. So you need to become very comfortable speaking about the material and not having to read from your notes. Glancing at your notes is fine, but you shouldn't have to read your paper. You should know it inside and out. So that, if you have to, glance down to make sure that you have the correct subsection of a particular statute is one thing, but there are certain things that you should just know off the top of your head. And so that constant practicing was good for us because it allowed us to really hone in and understand what we needed to know, and that we could speak off the cuff, that we weren't reliant upon our statute book or our notes or an outline. We had an outline, but and we followed it a little bit, but the judges switch it up, so then that goes out the window. And it just, but we at least knew what we wanted to talk about and what we wanted to articulate to make sure that our point got across.
That's a great point. And as a practicing attorney, we appreciate a hot bench, and when the judges ask us questions instead of having us kind of present our spiel. Robert, if I could turn back to you for a second, how would you help encourage your students to participate? As we mentioned, there's a lot of things going on. You've got class, some of us are working at the same time. What would you encourage students? What is your number one point, I guess a better way to put it? What is your number one point to encourage your students to participate?
I guess my number one point is, if you're interested in tax, and I don't think you'd be considering this if you weren't, this is a pretty realistic example of what you'll be doing at the start of your careers. So if you want to get a sample, this is a great opportunity.
That's great. And is there anything else you would like to add before we kind of open up the floor and reach back out to the student participants?
That's me again.
Yes, sir.
Again, I do tout the resume line value. I guess I tout the ability to get out of Syracuse in January and go somewhere warm. They never have ABA mid-year conventions in Detroit or Rochester, but
yeah, we can ask, but I think that's the advantage of the mid-year in California or Florida.
Right. So yes, I am, again, I encourage people to do it. I think this year, if we're lucky, Syracuse could have, I've talked to 6 teams so far. So I think we could have a lot of participation. And again, that's, owing to Tracy and Amanda's success. As you said earlier, that's a good promotional tool. So something's working. Maybe success is breeding more participation, but I definitely am a strong advocate of giving this a try. I know there used to be, I guess last year it didn't happen, there are tax moot courts that are more traditional appellate argument type thing. That's not realistic. I mean, for some people in practice, it's realistic, but can count them on a couple of hands. This is the realistic, tournament.
Thank you. If I could turn back to the previous winners. Isaac, is there anything that you'd like to add? Anything that we missed?
Yeah, actually I thought that was a great point made by Robert. So I always knew I wanted to go into transactional work, either corporate or tax, and I was in law review, but I never really went for the moot court or those type of activities. And with this activity, I agree. It felt like the real thing. It felt geared more towards transactional work, tax planning, and really like I believe that a meeting with a client would be very similar, maybe less intense with all the questions being asked by the judges, but it would be probably very similar. So I think it was a great opportunity. Um, I encourage everyone to participate and take advantage of all the work that the ABA does to put this competition together.
Thank you. Ivan, is there anything you would like to add?
No, I agree with my partner. And Robert, I agree with what he had to say about how it was a really good idea of what my job was going to be like once I started work, the kind of research I was going to do, sort of the kind of writing that I would have to do. Even just beyond being a good resume item, it was just good practice. So yeah.
Thank you. Tracy, same question. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, just echoing what everybody said, that being able to understand what is expected of an associate working in a, tax type of position or type of transactional work and the type of work that you'll be doing. It was extremely realistic. You're asked to write a memo. Here's an issue. Go research it and figure it out and come back to me with a memo. So it was realistic in those terms. And I think it was extremely helpful. And it was nice to be able to do something tangible that wasn't just simply, memorizing cases from, the 1800s. For me, it was, something that I knew that I felt like I could do, that if I was given the opportunity to actually put my skills to work, that I could actually be successful at it. And I guess it worked. So, but that was part of it, is being able to do something tangible that is realistic and not just memorizing things and regurgitating them back on an exam. It was realistic. So.
Great. And that's actually a wonderful point you kind of mentioned there. As Robert and I have mentioned, this is a resume bullet, of course, but also at the end of this, you're going to have a tangible work product that you can take to a job interview and say, this is what me and another student did without any access to the teachers, because the professors cannot help on the written product. And that's most law firms are going to want that written product. And now you're a step ahead with that. So that's a great point about having a tangible product at the end of this. And it shows your skills. You can write something technical to a partner, or you can write something to the client, which I think is hopefully come out today as a unique skill on itself that a lot of practitioners have trouble with. I see we've got about 10 minutes left in the program. Would any of the other participants like to ask a question at this time? Again, keep in mind that we cannot ask substantive questions concerning this year's program, but I will open the floor up to the other participants. I'm not seeing any takers. I'll give it a couple more seconds there while maybe someone's thinking of a question. I believe last year we were in San Diego. This year we'll be in San Francisco. It may not be quite as warm as San Diego, but it will still be better than Syracuse will be in January and most of the East Coast. So that is always an added bonus. And if you have the ability, even if it's not the mid-year, to any students that are listening, please try to attend a section. As Genevieve noted, your attendance is free to these section meetings. Are great networking events. I'm sure, and I've made this pitch to some of my friends before, you can pile 6 people in a car with $100 and drive to a concert. I'm sure you can do the same thing to an ABA conference. And if you can get a couple students together and show, especially on the East Coast, you're right there with the train or a flight, it's worth the time and effort to attend a meeting, both for networking, but also just to get a feel of how things really work at an ABA conference. And we'd love you as students and we'd love you as practitioners to be part of the tax section going forward. And that especially goes to the individuals on the call today. I would like to say, if we have any other questions. I'm not seeing anyone raising a hand or asking a question. So with that, I would like to congratulate Tracy, Ivan, and Isaac. You did a lot of work. I participated in the contest before. I understand how much work actually goes into it, and being able to say you won, or even just if you finish the product, is a great accomplishment. And I congratulate you on that. And Professor Nassau, again, that many students over that many times, that's a wonderful achievement to have, on the school's resume as well as your own. With that, I think we can conclude today, unless the ABA itself has something they would like to mention. I think we can conclude today's meeting.